when we went for the override, and I think that played a big role in it not passing. The selectmen are cooperative, and hopefully we can work together and get to some level of budget that is at least the status quo. And hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have dates before the next meeting, we'll have dates for the community input sessions, which, as Dr. Troughton said, we'll have probably in February, maybe into early March. And at those meetings, those will be your meetings. You come and tell us what you want us to do. Well, tell us what you want us to do, and then we'll go from there. But honestly, we're not. I hope we're not trying to work against you. We really appreciate all of the effort that all the parents who joined are putting into this, and hopefully we can work together and work with the selectmen and get this worked out. So, thanks. Okay, next.
Can I just ask, just in terms of planning here, don't we have a policy on
no cell phones in schools?
I take it one day.
The guy who can't
Right.
use
The computer, right.
doesn't realize there are chips on it.
do you want us to work on the available funds budget?
The 267,000.
Well, I think you need to work on both available funds budgets. I obviously have to take a look at the available funds minus the 600,000 and with the 600,000. And I think that I think that we have to look at and I'd like to see some suggestions for the improvement budget.
I mean, if you place in there, one is 885,000, the other is 267.
Shortfalls.
The shortfall,
Right.
from status quo.
Right.
To take it in chunks of, say, 200,000, 2, 4, 6, 8.
I'd like to see you do it in increments of $100. All the way.
So 4 different budgets.
Yeah, basically we're telling you work on 4 separate budgets.
So 4 separate budgets.
To every-
200,000, 400,000, 600,000, $800,000 reductions. That is if we have to go with available funds. 4 separate budgets. And what the cuts would be required, right? Then we have a status quo budget, which I think most of us have said we'd like to go beyond the status quo
Yeah,
and have some improvement
And
in
keep
that.
in mind, even if we were fortunate enough to get the $600,000, we'll still come up short on the status quo.
Right. So, but what I would like to see from the superintendent and Carl is, so those 4 budgets for available funds with the various levels of shortfalls, and then a budget that's somewhere between the mega improvement budget and the status quo budget and the restoration budget.
Well, I think, I think at that point, we need to be giving more input, and I think we need to hear the input from the public.
Well, this input's valuable too, because I mean, if in fact we're within $250,000, $300,000 of status quo, which means just carrying forward exactly what we're doing now, I agree. I think we can look to make adjustments in the overall appropriation. But the restoration budget, I think, is probably still out of reach.
Right, 'cause that's another 600,000 to 700,000.
And so I'm not sure we can get that far based on
Working
your
with
suggestions.
Right.
Yeah.
But we still haven't come up with our budget.
I agree. I agree.
And it's going to be somewhere between the restoration and the improvement.
Yes,
and
I think so.
We have to sit down in workshops
Yes.
with the input from the hearings and the superintendent's input,
recommendations, right. Yeah.
and we have to go through that
I
and
agree.
come up with.
I think that's the plan. I agree.
But that's what I'm wondering, say at the next meeting, they can come in with a recommended budget that's somewhere between that restoration. They can make their recommendations at our next meeting.
Well, they could, but that would be without the input from the
Well,
public.
we may be able to have 1 or so sessions between now and the next meeting. Carl?
We need to provide a detailed budget based on a school committee recommendation, probably 4 weeks from tonight. That's the end of February.
Right.
And we then have to translate that budget into detail. We'll get a solid date from the town as to when that's due. But if it's due 4 weeks plus a day, for example, that would mean you'd have to take a position on that.
Let's not do it until March.
Well, we had the finance planning team last week, we asked when.
They asked for the end of February.
They asked them in February.
Could we post a public meeting for next week? Early next week, so that we can get some input, you know, so that we can use the input? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking on these forums, Carl and I would be there. I'd like to have some staff members there, administrators, and perhaps a school committee member at each one. And I'll just set a series of dates, and maybe a morning, maybe an afternoon, maybe an evening to start, and let you know what it is, and publicize it, and open it up.
But I do think, you know, we do all have to make a recommendation, but I think we're looking at something between restoration and the full improvement budget.
I agree.
Because we've got to address class sizes and some of these other issues. Okay. So stay tuned in terms of those input meetings, and make sure you're all, I know you'll all be there. David, you all set with the budget? Next, we have approval of an excursion for a high school class to New York. And I actually have some questions on it before we approve it. It's an 8 a.m., they leave the high school at 8 a.m., it's a one-day trip. So they're going to be on buses for 10 hours. I guess it's okay, but I don't know, I just find the whole thing a little, I don't know if it's disconcerting, or, I mean, they're going to New York for a show, and then they're coming home. It
Well,
just,
they can sleep on the bus. Which is, you know, sounds really flip to put it that way, but, you know, that at least will, that, you know, I don't feel like we're keeping them up for 16 hours
yeah.
constantly. That's at least,
It
you know.
does.
But haven't they usually stayed over? Okay. I mean, I'm going to vote to approve it. I just.
What day of the week
Okay,
is
we're
this?
good.
April 5th. April 5th is Saturday.
Okay. All right.
I'm cool with that.
And most of them are young.
I'm just thinking of myself on a bus for 10 hours.
Yeah, the chaperones are.
Hey, as long as I don't have to drive or supervise my children, and I'm being kids.
All right.
Of course, mine are, you know, 7 and 3.
Well, they still need a chaperone.
Can I have a,
No,
they have three and they need one. Can I have a motion to approve the chorus and drama class trip to New York City? Motion by Mr. Derby. Do I have a
Second.
Second by Mrs. Davis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did we get a superintendent's?
Oh, no. That's good. Bills and payrolls, I believe we're done.
Yep.
Minutes.
And move to approve the open session of November 26th with 2 amendments.
Okay. Form, right?
Yeah, and one actually may not be a needed direction. Let me give the ones definitely wrong. The last paragraph on page 1, we have a student interest from instead of a student interest form, right, a statement of interest form.
Where's this?
The last paragraph on page 1, it just needs to be formed, but up under visitors, Sebastian is usually S-E-B.
Oh, yeah, usually is, yeah. Yeah, Sebastian.
I can't swear that this is
I think
misspelled.
that is.
but
I think that is.
Probably is. So, I got those 2 corrections.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Derby to accept the minutes. Ms. Davis, can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? What? Three, yeah, unanimous. Mr. Venezia abstaining since he's not here.
Move to approve the executive session minutes.
Oh, he wasn't present.
Number 26,
Wait, I wasn't hearing.
as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, and 1 abstention from Mr. Venezia. I don't believe we have a budget update tonight.
No,
Staffing,
no changes.
and we do have a bid, and donation, correct?
We do. We have a donation of a 40-inch Panasonic television. Actually, it's going to be donated to the little school, or used by the little school by North Reading resident Mr. Joseph LaRusso.
Move to accept with gratitude.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Any subcommittee updates here? Nothing on that, right? Nothing strategic planning, anything in administrative reports?
The only thing in the administrative report, and it does relate to finance, there is an excellent report out on the condition of finances in school districts. And this report, which you can get online by going to the Department of Education website, and then look under reports, research, and then look under reports, is a report on the current fiscal condition of Massachusetts. And there's also a PowerPoint that goes along with that, which I've shared with North Reading United for Education. And we also printed out North Reading's standing. It takes a look at 5 years. And so there's some interesting statistics included in that report that speak to what we were talking about earlier. Plain and simple, North Reading is not keeping up in a whole lot of ways with spending in education.
Right.
And at the same time, being burdened by a much higher increase in enrollment when compared to the state over a 5-year period. And you're seeing the state is actually slightly declining, whereas North Reading is increasing its enrollment, at least in this 5-year period, FY02 to 07, according to the foundation enrollment, by 12.8%.
Well, it's interesting when you look at the Chapter 70 numbers and you look at, go to the DOE website or the Department of Revenue, and you see how many districts are actually experiencing declining enrollment. There's a lot of that.
That's what's reflected in the Chapter 70 distribution.
Right, right. It's a great report. I recommend anybody go to the DOE website, and it's easy to find. And it has a lot of good information. Anything else, David? Any correspondence? Okay, future business. Our next meeting is, where do I have that?
February 11th.
February 11th, is it? At the Hood School, I believe. At 7 p.m. And then February 25th back at the middle school at 7:30. And then sometime in the next few weeks. Right. Should we schedule some budget workshops at this point, or?
Budget workshops or the forum?
Both. I think we should schedule at least one public forum before we have the budget workshop, though. How about next Monday night for a budget forum?
Probably a good idea.
How do you define the difference between those?
The forum would be
Forum
the
is just
public
public
session for
input.
public input.
The workshop would be
Workshop
what we
would just
do
be
with
us rolling it
public
right
Right.
loose.
Workshop.
Workshop is just
Anybody can come, but the workshop is basically us.
okay, forum is listening,
Yes,
workshop is doing.
yes.
But at the forum, we do have to present something. So what is on the table now would be this administration's recommendations on what a restoration budget and what an improved quality budget would in 2 separate columns. And there was a lot of discussion about somehow merging or talking about those, but we could break that down into some major discussions and try to determine the level of priorities.
Yep.
Restoring Wednesdays, putting a health program into the middle school, restoring libraries.
During phys ed in
phys ed,
juniors and
art,
seniors in high school.
music,
Freshman
band,
sports.
chorus, a number of programs.
Right.
Yeah, and then not necessarily mutually exclusive. Restoring art and music basically restores Wednesday.
Art, music, and PE.
And
So I can do next